Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to our Planning and Zoning Board meeting today, the May 17th. Good to see everybody here. The first item on our agenda will be to review the consent and approve that agenda. Let's see, Jennifer, you have agreed to do that. There are a few items. Actually, before I do that, let me make reference to these blue cards. They have been coming in. If any of you are interested to speaking to any of the cases that are listed on the agenda for today that happen to be on the consent agenda, if we read that and you want to speak without the blue card, it passes as it stands. If anyone has not filled out a blue card and wish to speak to one of the cases, I would ask to bring them forward. I have quite a few already. Is there anybody out there wishing? Okay, I think we're good. So that having been said, Jennifer and others, a couple things. First of all, we need to remove the approval of the minutes from the consent agenda. There was an error on those dates, and so we will readdress that next month. We are also pulling off item 4A, which is case Z16-23, if you'll get that one. We are pulling off case Z, which is 4C, which is Z17-017. And the other one will have speakers already off consent, so I won't even mention that. So those three items, Jennifer, will need to come up. 017? The second, it'd be 4C, Z17-017. Anytime you're ready.
Okay. So the items on the consent agenda for today's meeting, we're starting with item number Z1701 District 2, the 400 block of South Higley Road, the east side, located on the east side of Higley Road, south of Broadway Road. A site plan review. This request will allow for development of a self-storage facility. Staff recommendation is continuance to June 21st, 2017. Next item, Z17016, District 3, 1343 South Gilbert Road, located on the east side of Gilbert Road, north of Hampton. The site plan modification. This request will allow for development of a restaurant with a drive-through. Staff recommendation, approval with conditions. Item Z17019, District 6, the 10,000 to 10,800 block of East Point 22 Boulevard, and the 9,600 to 10,400 block of East Elliott Road, located between Point 22 Boulevard and Elliott Road, and between Eastmark Parkway alignment and Signal Butte Road. Development unit plan. This request will approve a development unit plan 5/6 within the Eastmark Community Plan. This is a companion case to a preliminary plat, DU for 5 and 6. The staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Next item on consent is Z17014, District 5, the 8,700 to 9,000 blocks of East Main Street, located south of Main Street and west of Ellsworth Road, rezoned from Maricopa County C-3 and RU-43 to City of Mesa GC and RS-43. This request will establish city zoning on recently annexed property. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item Z17018, District 4, the 400 block of South Bellevue, located south of Broadway Road and east of Mesa Drive, rezoned from NC to RSL-4.5. This will allow for the development of 3 single residential lots. Staff recommendation, approval with conditions. Item Z17-020, District 1, the 2,400 to 2,800 block of East Thomas Road, located north of Thomas Road and west of Lindsay alignment. Rezoned from Maricopa County RU-43 to City of Mesa RS-43. This request will establish city zoning on recently annexed property. Staff recommendation, approval with conditions. Next item is the preliminary plat DU 5-6 for District 6. Do I need to read the entire description of the preliminary plat
I don't think
case?
it's necessary.
Okay, it's the same as, okay. And this is a companion case to Z17-019. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item PZ 17046, proposed zoning ordinance amendment to section 11-31-34 regarding medical marijuana facilities, including dispensaries, cultivation facilities, and infusion facilities. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Chair, if we
Yes.
could add on that last item, that staff recommendation is approval on that text
Excuse
amendment.
me. Yes, and staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
And I might also add, that's just adding definition to that section, is that?
It modifies one of the separation requirements.
Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Yeah, I motion that we approve the consent agenda as read and any conditions read in.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, is there any discussion? Okay, please vote. The vote was unanimous. Any of you are here for any of those cases, you're free to go or free to stay and enjoy the rest of the activity. So we have 3 cases that we will be discussing. Our first one is item 4A, it's case Z16-023, District 5, the 2400 to 2600 blocks of North Greenfield Road. Let's see here on 4A. I think what we'll do, let's go ahead and begin with a presentation from staff on that. Tom, if you'd.
All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is a rezoning request for the 2400 block to 2600 block of North Greenfield Road on the west side. It's located north of McDowell Road on the west side of Greenfield Road. It's approximately 70 acres. The piece of property is owned by the city of Mesa. This is a request to modify the zoning that was put on the property in 2008. In 2008, the property was rezoned to PEP with a development master plan overlay. With the code update, the zoning code update in 2011, that became a PAD overlay. What the request here is to modify that PAD overlay to establish some specific design guidelines to guide the future development of the property. It also allows for a modification to the entitlement process to allow future site plan review through the administrative review process while it goes through a design review process as well. With that, we're recommending approval with conditions, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions on this case before I allow public input? Question? All right. We have 3 cards on this case. I think we'll begin with D. Montague, if you would like to come speak.
I think D is on item 7A.
7A, did I get it in the wrong pile? Well,
Yeah,
then
I thought you had more than
sit
3.
tight. Sorry, let's put it in the wrong pile. Got you worried there, huh? Okay, well, now we're down to 2. That went fast. So the first,
This might be 7A as well.
is that 7A? Where did?
Should have about 5 or 6 of them, I think, for
I think it's
this
the big
particular
stack.
item.
How did they, okay. So these are all one, let's make sure before I speak we get these. Let's see, 4A, there we are. 4A. Do you see any, are they 4A?
And what about that?
That's a 7A, there's a 4A, here's another 4A. Well, they did get all scrambled up. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. First person which is to speak is Mike Lawley. You're in favor of this item. Since there are a number of cards this afternoon, I would ask that you would respect the 3-minute limit per person or combine that with someone else.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee members. I'm Mike Lawley. I'm the CFO of a company, Our Precision, also Our Medical. We are a contract manufacturer that does work with medical device makers, primarily in the diagnostic sector. We are expanding our business. It's a big portion of our growth opportunities here in the next few years. And within 24 months, we'll be looking at new facilities to move our clean room manufacturing operations into a state-of-the-art facility. When we learned of this project, we were very, very excited. This is exactly the type of project that we want to be involved with. We want a showcase piece for our customers who are, we're dealing with the largest medical companies in the world. We'd like them to come in, see a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility clustered with other like-kind businesses. So we are very, very intrigued by the opportunity to potentially move our expansion efforts and actually keep them right here in Mesa. We're a Mesa manufacturer, so we'd love to stay within the city limits. And this type of project is exactly what we're looking for. So I encourage you to approve this because we would love to do nothing more than continue our manufacturing here in Mesa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next person is Jeff Crockett. You're in favor of this and you do wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jeff Crockett. I'm a resident of the city of Mesa.
And where you live? I'm sorry.
My address is 3259 East Jacaranda Circle, Mesa, Arizona, 85213. Grew up in Mesa, went to Mountain View High School just up the road from this project. And I also serve on the board of directors of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. I'm one of the City of Mesa representatives on that board. And so I spend a lot of time dealing with economic development issues for the City of Mesa. And you'll hear from a couple of us today that are this afternoon that are board members. What I wanted to focus on is, as a lifelong resident of Mesa, I've got 4 children. 3 of them have been to Mountain View. One's graduating next week, and I've got 1 to go. And as I look at what the opportunities that are out there for them, it's so critical that we have quality jobs in Mesa that can keep these kids here. We have some fantastic youth that are going through programs around the city, graduating with some great skill sets, and we need to have jobs, good paying jobs to keep them here in Mesa. This project is one of those projects, and so I wholeheartedly support the application for the rezoning. Technology, life sciences, those are areas that are going to be big growth areas in the future. They will provide good paying jobs that will keep our kids here in Mesa. So I would urge you to vote in favor of the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Next person up is Richard Adams. You're in favor of the project and you do wish to speak?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members. Richard Adams at 1536 East Elmwood in Mesa. I'm here today to encourage you to support the staff recommendation of approval for this case known as the Falcon Tech Center. I'm a Mesa resident since childhood and also serve Mesa as a member of the board of directors of GPEC, the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. Additionally, I had the privilege of serving Mesa as chairman of the Falcon Area Visioning Commission, which was established in April 2014 by Mayor Finter and the City Council at that time. Purpose of that was to accelerate the pace of economic growth and progress and ensure the Falcon Field Economic Activity Area will continue to excel and grow. The commission was comprised of business professionals, citizens, commercial real estate people, and we worked over a number of months to produce a document which was ultimately approved and accepted by council. I'd like to highlight a number of key elements of the strategic plan that the commission delivered to council in September 2014. Each of these key elements, I believe, are very germane to the case before you today. Goal number 1 of the plan, create and retain quality jobs in Mesa. Additional goals, identify opportunity for commercial development. Maximization of city-owned resources. This is directly from the plan, more specifically, to leverage City of Mesa-owned real estate and utilities within the Falcon Field Economic Activity Area to add value to city site proposals and packages. Also to consider creating P3 partnerships to develop spec office space. That is directly from the plan that Council adopted in September 2014. I submit to you the case before you is precisely what the Falcon Field Economic Activity Area Plan called for. The Falcon Tech Center, to be located within the heart of this area, will facilitate much-needed high-quality development that will result in high-quality jobs right here in Mesa. This is the case of the City of Mesa facilitating development and job creation, not competing with it. It is my belief this project will spark interest within the development community, and I think this is one of those projects that creates a rising tide that will float all boats in that area. Mesa needs move-in ready, high-quality commercial space, and we need it now, and we don't have it. As a member of the GPEC board, I'm aware of many potential opportunities that come our way that we cannot land because we do not have that move-in ready space. Mesa misses nearly 90% of potential high-quality GPEC deals because we do not have that high-quality space. Those go elsewhere. Those jobs go elsewhere. They don't come to Mesa. I firmly believe we need to change that. I would ask that you consider this case, consider staff's recommendation, and approve this case and send it on to council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Next up, I have Katie Gazza. You're in favor of the item and you do wish to speak.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Katie Gazda, 4024 East Diamond Circle, 85206. I was born and raised here in Mesa. I am a proud graduate of Mesa High, and I currently work at Red Mountain High School where I teach the biotechnology program. In this program, I teach the students the skills and knowledge to use in the bioscience industry. Along the way over a 2-year process, I work on getting them field experience by going over to research facilities. I get them mentorships for their research projects and internships. The closest facility that really offers that opportunity for them is ASU, which is not too far, right? But a development like we're speaking of here really would give so much more opportunity for these students. It's right in their backyard. We have 4 biotech programs here in Mesa. In the Mesa Public Schools. There are other local areas that also, more charter schools that have bioscience also. So we have a huge plethora of high school students who have these skills and have nowhere to use them, except for at ASU or TGen or Barrow. And those are kind of outside city limits. It would be really nice to keep them here. My students do take internships there. All the places that I just mentioned, students have internships at, but I'd really like to see them have an internship closer to home. Somewhere that when they finish their post-secondary education, they can come and have a career here in Mesa for bioscience. So I am definitely in support of this and encourage you to be also, because it just makes so many more opportunities for our young people who are studying in this field, and definitely would promote their vision of the field if it's more local. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, you have Brian Campbell. You're in favor of the project and you also wish to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Brian Campbell. I'm a Mesa resident, 4309 North Deserts Gate in Mesa. As a volunteer, I serve with the other gentleman you've heard from on GPEC's board, representing the city of Mesa. I'm also the past chair of the East Valley Partnership, and I also serve both on GPEC's and EVP's executive committee. And I've been doing this for more than a decade. And I look back over the records, I've volunteered thousands of hours for economic development for Mesa and the East Valley. And I'm here today to ask you to help us by approving the Falcon Tech Center as recommended by staff. The reason why is that we are in a high-stakes competition for our economic future. I'm going to provide some perspective that you may not have heard from the other speakers today. We as a city, and we're about the size, we're larger than Pittsburgh and Salt Lake City. We compete with Denver, Austin, Provo, Portland, for these high-tech opportunities. We call it the innovation economy, the knowledge-based economy. That's where everything is going in where we're going. If we win those competitions, we get the high-wage jobs. That means more tax revenue. That means less demand on city services, more infrastructure, and overall a much higher quality of life. If we lose these competitions, you end up like Detroit. Okay, and that carries everybody's vision that comes with it, but that's a cautionary tale. The reason I picked Detroit, did you know that Detroit right now, if you look at per capita personal income, they're 95% of the national average, and they're going up. In the Phoenix metro area right now, we're at 83% of the national average, and we're trending downward. Not in Mesa, but I'm talking as a region. We are not winning the competition. So what do we need to compete? Basically, you need two things. And I go to California, we've gone overseas, we recruit and we talk to the C-suite people. You need basically two things. You need a high-quality workforce, and you've heard from teachers and the programs. We compete quite well as a workforce in Mesa. When you have Poly, Benedictine, MCC, Mesa Public Schools, we do quite well on the workforce side. But you also need high-quality places that you can locate and do this kind of work. Because when you win these battles, you end up creating a great deal more jobs. Did you know that right now in the Phoenix metro area, we are almost dead last in patent applications? We track patents at GPEC because it's an analog for innovation. We're just a tick above Riverside, California. That's why if you look at like our per capita output, our GDP, we're 76% of the national average in the Phoenix area. The folks that are creating, that are 6 times the number of patents, they're at 120% of the national average. We are losing the innovation fight because we don't have the space. Right now, and you talked about the GPEC deals in the pipeline. Let me explain a little bit what that means. GPEC is the organization that goes across the world and qualifies and recruits prospects, and we put them in our pipeline. If we qualify them, that means we think we've got a shot to land them in the Phoenix area. Once they're qualified, they're broadcast to all the cities in the Phoenix metro region, and Mesa and everybody else bids on them and responds to those requests. Right now, and I'm going on April's numbers, there's 285 deals in the pipeline. Of that 285, and Mesa's bidding, trying to chase every single one of those, that's what Bill Jabginiak and his team do a great job. 141 are these high-quality locations. That's R&D, medical device, corporate HQs, the type of stuff you've heard about. Of that 141, 70% need existing space. That's 100 deals right now we could be chasing that would give us the high-wage jobs. Do you know how many high-quality locations we have right now that I can use to respond to those 100 deals that GPEC says we can get right now? I have less than 10 in the city of Mesa. That means I'm missing out on nearly 90% of the deals I can't even bid on. And that doesn't stop us. We still put our applications in, but we get cut immediately. So please, this is a critical issue to the future of our community, is to have deals like Falcon Field Tech Center. It's what is going to drive our community for generations. So I urge you, please approve it, and I'm available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Let's see, we also have, and help me with this, is it Thalia Tommen? How do we say that? I'll let you pronounce your name in the microphone, thank you. you're in favor of and you also are wishing to speak. Go ahead.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Thalia Tommen. I am a junior at Red Mountain High School, a Mesa resident at 1063 South Sawyer Street. I'm here before you today to show my support of this project because as someone who is fully invested in biotech and biosciences, I feel it is very important that we create an institution like this in Mesa. My wonderful mentor, Katie Gazza, has been amazing with providing me opportunities, but the opportunities are limited. And there are great generations following me with the same set of skills and the same mentors. So it'd be amazing if we could have an institute local in our backyard that could provide these opportunities, these jobs, and these careers. Personally, as someone in biotech, I unfortunately am looking and going out of city limits for a career as of now. Unless, of course, that changes, I would be more than happy to come back to home. So I strongly support this project and encourage you to vote in favor. So thank you.
Thank you, Talia. Thanks for coming out and sharing your opinion. Last card I have is for Peter Swingle, the architect. Do you wish to speak? What's that? It says 4A. Hold your thoughts, we'll put you in the right pile. That is it, I guess. All right. That being said, I guess it's time for us to discuss the case. I might start out with mentioning that it is on approval on consent. With the, excuse me, yes.
I'm Mike Wilson. I filled out a blue card.
I saw, thank you, Mike. Well, where did that one go? Mike, would you come forward? Here you are. Thank you. And you wish to speak in favor of it as well.
Mr. Chairman and Board, thanks for hearing me today. I developed and own the 20-acre business park that is immediately adjacent to the site we're talking about 10 years ago. So I'm a real estate developer, an owner. I've got about 800,000 feet that I own or have ownership interest in the city of Mesa. So I have a vested interest in the economy here. I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the benefits of this type of development to the citizens in the city. Over the last 10 years or so, we've paid a little under $2.5 million in property taxes, most of which goes to local schools. Had that site not been developed, it would have been about $10,000. So pretty big impact on the schools that the kids go to and such. I also paid about $500,000 in permit fees to the city of Mesa over the last 10 years, and that included $105,000 for McDowell Road improvements and another $150,000 SRP for the utility improvements they made along the road. So pretty significant economic impact compared to what had been agricultural land before. Right now, I've got about 20 businesses at my site employing somewhere between 200 and 250 people, and they go out and buy food at the restaurants nearby and the auto repair places and really add a lot to the commerce of the city. And in 10 years, I've never had a complaint from any of the citizens. Nothing has ever reached me. I've not heard of a single issue with this development being there. And I'll say that what the city of Mesa is considering is a very high quality development. So it's generally consistent with existing zoning, and it's a high class site. I mean, I didn't know about it until I got a notice being a neighbor, and I went to the presentation that Lori made, and I said, wow, this would be great. It'd have a positive impact on my development. It'd bring more business in. It'd have an increase on real estate property values throughout. I mean, this type of development helps everybody from residential through commercial. So I'm about out of time, but I'm strongly supportive of the deal. I think it helps everybody across the board in Mesa, whether you're a private citizen or a business owner. That's all I have. Thank you.
Just real quick, I don't believe we got an address, Mike. I don't believe we got your address when you came to the microphone. So
My business address or my development address?
Whatever address you'd like to give us, your residence.
Okay. My office is 8120 East Cactus Road, Scottsdale, Arizona, 85260.
Okay. Thank you for your input, and thank you for stopping me before we got too far along. Okay, I think we've got everybody now. At this point, we'll open it up for discussion among ourselves. Any comments, thoughts at this point? You know, I think we've all been supportive and excited about this as we've watched it develop. We've talked, I think, a little bit about citrus trees and what becomes of them. But it's great to see, just in spite of the fact that it has moving towards approval and very positive, we'd have these many members of the public wish to speak still in favor of it and without any opposition, which is quite nice. Yes, Tim.
I drove the area today,
Okay.
and those citrus trees do need some help.
Okay.
So they don't look as great as they did when I saw them last 20 years ago.
Okay. So the project may be a help for some of those trees. Create some options for them. Any other comments? All right.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Okay. I'd like to recommend approval of item 4A, case Z16023, a rezone from PEP PAD and PS PAD to PEP PAD and PS PAD with the staff recommended conditions.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
I second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, Steve. It looks like we're going to give it to Dan on this one. All right. Is there any further discussion? If not, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you, public, for your input coming out today. Okay, let's make sure we get 17, 4C. Where's our? Yeah, these numbers. So is this a 4? This is, I think this is this one. That's 17. What? See, that's 7A. Is this, what's this one, 7A?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's, so this is a 17 as well. Okay. The next case is item Z17-017, District 5, the 1,000 block of North Ellsworth Road. We will begin by letting staff do their presentation. With that, Wahid, I'll turn the time over to you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and member of the board. This is a rezoning from RS43 to LCBIZ. This is mainly for a project for self-storage. It's at the corner of Ellsworth and Brown. As you are aware of that corner, that site has less accessibility. Basically, all you can access that site is from Ellsworth Road. To the south, residential homes built and separated with wall, and to the west, you have that floodways, and you don't have any access to Brown Road. So most probably because of that, this site never got developed into residential. So this proposal in front of you is a self-storage facility. It's pretty much approximately 8 acres, and it's a rezoning because it's a commercial, that's why it's LC request. And BIZ is basically for 4 items. They're asking for a reduced landscaping along the west, the floodway, and also they are asking for an 8-foot wrought iron view fence on that side, reduced foundation base along Ellsworth Road, and also to take the opportunity of alternative landscaping because of reusing some of the native plants, the sorrows and all, so they can mix match that to provide some views and all that. Other than that, they are within the desert upland area that was, and also desert general plan wise, and also desert upland has design guidelines. So applicant is working with us, finalizing the design. They already been in front of the design review board to get their opinion and direction. They're working in that, finalizing that, which hopefully next month they will go in front of the design review board and finalize. So for us, staff is supportive of the site plan. The layout that they provided us is basically 2 buildings separated by a driveway in between. With that, staff recommends approval with conditions, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have.
Any questions, staff, our board members? Okay, thank you. This time I'll let the applicant speak if he wishes to. Actually, I have 2 cards, one from the applicant, Adam Baum, and also the architect for the project, Peter Swingle. Now it's your turn if you let you.
You know, I have a presentation, but I don't know if you need as much of it, but I can flip to some exhibits if necessary. I'll say it's a challenge site. It's got some weird, I probably should introduce myself before I kick off.
Thank you.
Adam Baugh, Withy Morse, 2525 East Arizona, Biltmore Circle. As I was mentioning, it's a bit of a challenge site because first of all, it has an odd shape and geometry. It's a triangle at the corner of an arterial to arterial intersection. The impact, though, is it doesn't have any access to Brown Road, and that's kind of an unusual circumstance. If that was the only problem it had, maybe it could have been developed, but you have a median along the Ellsworth side with blocking any opportunity for a left turn in. And as you know, access is key to any property being developed these days. I think that's the reason why it never has been developed up until now. And so it takes somebody who's a little bit creative and trying to find a solution. Typically, you see commercial uses at arterial intersections. I think a traditional commercial here would have a hard time without the right access. The beauty of our use, though, and I think why staff's recommended approval, is storage uses create very little traffic. At its peak time, you might have 6 trips. And because it's not a drive-by type of use, but it's more of a destination use, people are comfortable working around that circulation that if they did it on a traditional center, they would just pass up because they couldn't get into it. As I started this case, before I even filed an application with the city, I knew how important it was to work with the community. And so found out who the HOA president was by driving the community and seeing a little sign posted on their mailbox of a community meeting. Met with them at the HOA president and another member at a breakfast. Met again with the 2 plus a third at another Starbucks across the street. And the idea that I wanted to get from their feedback was, what are some of the things that are important to you? And I heard really just 2 or 3 minor things. One was lighting. Make sure lights don't protrude across the property line. 2, they have a drainage issue. The site's never really been taken care of for drainage, and it just keeps pushing into their retention basin. And so finding a drainage solution that worked for them and us was key. And then the third thing was just building heights in general. And so we took some cues. I've done a lot of storage facilities, particularly indoor, and they almost always go 2-story because they're climate controlled. It's really unusual to go single-story, but we want to be respectful of the building heights. So our heights are about along the southern edge between 12 feet and 14 feet tall, which is the same size of the homes that are in that area today. The drainage solution's been resolved with our project. We've originally had one plan with a big retention basin in the southwest corner. As part of working with staff and looking at the desert uplands and trying to bring this more in compliance with that, we decided to break it up into 2 buildings so it's not one big massing. But more importantly, we were able to articulate these 2 buildings with character and architecture more symbolic of that area. But 3, we were able to underground our retention and solve the drainage that had been flowing onto their property. The thing I most appreciate is the feedback that I had from a gentleman who I think you have a card from named Bob. And Bob's comment was, hey, I see Spook Hill when I look out my backyard, and I want to make sure I still see Spook Hill. And we had a lot of trees planted in that retention basin. We were just trying to comply with code. But after getting his feedback and doing an inventory on the property, realizing we have an opportunity to replant a lot of these native plants, why don't we put a lot of that cactus in that corner so we comply with the landscaping requirement, but we still give him the views that he expects to have along of Spook Hill. And so that's the proposal that's before you today. It has a couple of minor deviations, but that's really to capture, the intent of desert uplands. We didn't want to have a perimeter wall that blocks the view if desert uplands is supposed to be open views, so we put a view fence there. The canal is 145 feet wide, and so we are adding 6 feet of landscape on our side, but it still has a very expansive view there. The BIZ to include the modified landscaping, and the BIZ to include a little bit of foundational landscaping around the perimeter as well. So it's gone well. I don't think staff's received any letters of opposition. We've been encouraged by the process and just working closely and working together. I'm interested to hear what the rest of the comments are, but I've tried to be brief because I know you got a busy day, and I skipped the presentation, but if you'd like me to show anything, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
At the same time, Mr. Swingle, you also filled out a card. Were you wishing to speak now, or you want to?
I'm actually for 7A.
How did that? I'll go back to bed.
hold up.
I think you need to fire your vice chair.
What's
No,
that?
I'm just kidding.
You can't fire me.
No, I think she's looking at me as, what are you doing here? Thank you. Okay, we do have one other card on that, and that is Bob Nicholson. If you'd like to come forward, you have not indicated whether you are in favor or opposed to the project.
My name is Bob Miklos. I'm located at 1054 North 91st Place, directly south of the development. If I could get a staff member to pass these around to the committee, please. So what I would like to talk about today is my vested interest in the community in the city of Mesa. The developer's proposed density, and this, by the way, is the first time I'm seeing this, property drainage, and the proposed building height. Now, if we can work together, I've already told Adam I'd like to be a customer of the project. So if I could just go on and demonstrate my vested interest in the community. I live 30 feet away from the development. I have to use my glasses here. I've lived at this current address for 17 years and had the house built as new in 1999. I picked this lot specifically for the mountain views. I had options to choose a larger lot, but I specifically chose this one for the views. When I decided to buy my lot, I researched the property to the north, the one that we're discussing here today, and found out that it was zoned 1 acre residential. So I felt pretty confident in my purchase decision that I would not end up beside a commercial development. No. Firstly, I'm in favor of development. I work in in the industry designing custom homes, so I believe in the landowner's right to develop their property. I understand that cities grow, zoning maps change. So I'm not fully against this proposed project, but I would like to see some adjustments. We are a hillside community with tremendous views in every direction. Residential homes were built purposely for single level to preserve these views. These views include Spook Hill, Usury Mountains, Radio Tower Mountain, and even the Superstition Mountains. So if you flip to the first page after the agenda, you'll see me digging in the yard. I've spent the last 17 years working on my property, at which I've planted 60 trees, 200 plants, 85 pots. There's 3 waterfalls, an elevated hot tub, mountain views, several sitting areas. I've really worked hard to make this a nice area. If you flip to the second page, you'll see the finished view of my backyard and Spook Hill. The proposal right now would block that view. I've spent thousands of hours, tens of thousands of dollars, single-handedly creating this landscape, really for my wife and I to enjoy during retirement. I actually proposed to my wife on the top of Spook Hill. Now, if you allow the applicant to vegetate that area and currently build where he is, that view is lost forever. If you flip to the third page, I'm also highly involved in our neighborhood. I designed the entrance. We added stone planters, some gabion accents, and I think it really dressed up the neighborhood to a higher end look. The fourth page shows the entrance before and after. The neighborhood looked very institutional when I first moved in, and that's why we came up with the idea to build the planters and really make it nicer. So as you can see, I'm really invested in this community. If we flip to the second last page, and that's the actual development that I was given by the developer several weeks ago. So what I'm seeing here today that's the first time I've seen it. So one of the primary justifications for zoning is to prevent incompatible land uses, such as keeping industrial facilities out of residential areas, uses that would be an inherent nuisance. This page depicts what the developer would like to do on the left-hand side. What I'm proposing is a slightly smaller development, and that would be more consistent with the neighborhood. Right now, the Doctor's Choice Assisted Living is a 17% lot coverage. The current applicant is proposing a 46% lot coverage, which is more than double the land use of the area. CVS is at 16%, Chevron 13%, Highland Village 23%. My personal residence is at 22%. And again, 46% is what the applicant is asking for, and I think that's just a gross misuse of that land. As a homeowner, I am directly impacted by this proposed development, and as a representative of the community, we are requesting the City of Mesa planners reject the proposed lot coverage of 46% in lieu of something that is more consistent with surrounding land uses. However, I do have a solution for Adam. I don't want to rain on his parade. He could add a basement. He could market the property as special cold storage and really have a neat little niche. So I'm not here to stop it. Again, he addressed the drainage and flooding. I haven't seen any of his current underground water retention, as he's calling it. There's several water courses that run through the property, and like you said, we have been flooded several times. So I want to make sure whatever water is being dropped on that property stays on that property. Now, the vegetation and landscaping, this community has developed around the natural beauty of the Sonoran Desert. Mountain views and towering saguaro cacti dominate the surrounding area. The applicant in their community address letter dated March 17th described and quoted their proposed project as additional visual interest is being provided with the use of lush landscaping palette that includes a variety of vibrant, dense, low water use plants. Well, it's a desert. We don't need lush landscaping in a current desert area. So if you look on the last page, there's a little red line that goes through the development, and that's kind of what I'm proposing Ellsworth Road to be. Our community right now is actually, our finished floors are below Ellsworth Road. And if you look at the development across the road at Highland Village, they're about 7 feet below Brown Road. So what I don't want to see is this development trying to dominate the landscape. I would rather see it set down into the landscape to mimic what else is going on out there. And that's basically all I had to say. So thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Let's see. What's that?
I said, don't touch this.
Don't touch us. Okay. Mr. Bob, would you like to respond to some of those concerns?
I would, and I think it'd be appropriate if I add a simple exhibit to help illustrate.
Okay, thank you.
I'll only know just enough to plug it in, and that's probably where my technological skills end. So bear with me as I figure this thing out. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then what button do I hit to switch over? Okay, great. There we go. Oh boy, man, that doesn't show. It's hard to see. I don't know if you have from your monitors if you're able to see the same image. Okay, good. I I certainly am sensitive to the comments raised. I think I can hit on a couple of things if it's worth highlighting. The first one is the view corridor. So the arrow, the red line that you see here is a line from Bob's house to the view of Spook Hill. And you can see that line, our building is unobstructing that view of Spook Hill. Even if that line widened, it still doesn't block the view of that. In particular, I want you to notice that we've carved out a little corner of our building, which just to make it even more certain that that view is preserved. The second thing I want to highlight, though, is even under the current zoning, you can have a two-story structure today. That as a residential structure, you have the height, and then you have the pitched roof, which would obscure much more than what we would be proposing today. Our original plans were a 26-foot tall building on the entryway only, and a 14-foot tall building along the southern edge. Part of this process is to evolve and improve the plans with that feedback. So while it might be new to him, it's also new to us. Just over this weekend and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, tweaking these plans to make them even more appropriate. So the building height right at the entryway, closer to Ellsworth, has gone from 26 down to 21 feet. And the neighbor directly behind that has been supportive of it. So that neighbor has no concern. The building height of our storage units along the southern side have gone from 14 feet down to 12 and 14 feet averaging. So we've actually even cut those down further. But it still doesn't ignore the fact that even if you had a single family home here, they could be up to 2 stories tall. The thing that I most want to highlight, though, is even if you compare our standards to the limited commercial standards, limited commercial zoning allows 30 feet tall. Most of our heights are around 12 to 14, except for the entryways, which are still less than 30 feet. Limited commercial zoning allows 60% lot coverage. We're asking for 46%. And the limited commercial building setbacks are north, south, east, and west. We exceed them in all regards. But the key to point out here is even if I had a residential structure, those residential structures would be much closer to the southern property line than our building. And that being much closer to the southern property line at 2 stories tall, this is actually better for the views of that area if you were to develop under the current zoning. I don't disregard the concerns he has. I actually, because of his comments at our neighbor meeting, and at the design review session, we decided to take the trees out of the retention area in the southwest corner and put saguaro cactus in place because they don't have a big canopy. It wouldn't obstruct the view. And so we've tried to be responsive by doing that, by lowering our heights and by internalizing that drainage. I think the big picture here is I don't know what you would do with this property otherwise. It's got a lot of constraints and impacts on it. This is one of those uses that actually work really well. And I remember sitting down with the HOA president and the other HOA board member who said, I have a rental home in Phoenix. One of these are behind my properties. It's been the perfect use because no one's there. Very few trips, no noise, no lights. And so those are all the things that I think are really appropriate for this type of use compared to any alternative that otherwise may exist. So I appreciate your time, giving me the chance to present my case and share a couple of other considerations. But of course, I'm open to any feedback or suggestions you may have.
Thank you, Adam. Before he sits down, any questions?
I had just a question. On the elevations we have in our packet, I'm showing the top of the parapet at 19.4.
Yes,
Or is
the
it taller?
entryway. We have, that's for the southern building. That parapet will be 21 feet. We've been rushing over the weekend to tweak our plans. In fact, I'll also tell you, the reason why it's two building plan today instead of one single massing building is because we want to be respectful of that desert uplands area and break things up and give them a little bit of architectural distinction. So in the rush, we lowered our building heights, but it's 21 feet, I believe, not 19 feet. And that's only at that entryway area. I should also add, we're not bringing in any new filter. We're not importing. We're not raising our site. We're developing at the grade of the property as it exists today.
What is our square footage today as it stands?
About 80,000, 88,000, something like that.
Okay, thank you. Right, board members, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, any comments on this? Anything to discuss? Steve? There you go.
Well, I remember this property. I'm somewhat familiar with it. Our family owned the property on the northwest corner of that, and when the flood control canal came through and literally destroyed the northeast and the southwest corners of that, I was wondering what kind of development can go there. And I see this development here, and I think there's a lot of work that has been done on it, and with all due respects to the residents in the area, I think that this development would be good for it, because like I said, we own this the north of that property. It's back in the early or the mid-1980s, and nothing has really been done with that property since then, since that canal came through. But I think it's a good project, and I'll probably be in support of it.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Anybody else? If not, then I'll call for a vote. I mean a motion, excuse me. Thank you, Steve.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move that we approve the applicant's request for their rezone, their site plan review and the rezone from RS-43 to LC-BIZ as written in case number Z1701 in District 5 to allow for their self-storage facility along with the conditions of approval.
Okay, so approval with conditions. Do I have a second on that motion? Okay, thank you, Tim. Any further discussion? If not, please vote.
Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, God.
You seen it on? Oh, there it goes. Yeah, I was surprised you were thinking it, and I didn't even see what the vote was. That was pretty good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it did pass unanimously, as you saw on the large screen up there. Thank you, everybody, for your participation on that case. The last case on our agenda for today is case Z17-004, District 1, the 700 block of North Country Club Drive. This is a request to allow a multifamily residential development, and we'll begin with a presentation from staff, and I'll turn it over to you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and member of the board. This case is a site plan for a proposed apartment complex for 71 units, 60 of them 2-bedroom and 11 of them 3-bedroom units. The applicant has worked with the neighbors since February, even before earlier than that. They had 4 scheduled neighborhood meetings. Yes, initially there were a lot of oppositions, and especially one at the design review board meeting, the first one. And the applicant listened to them and worked with and came back the next design review with a better design that the board supported, and also some of the residents who were in opposition came and kind of supported and provided comments. So anyway, they have, the applicant has worked with staff and the neighbors and improved the project substantially from the initial meeting or initial submittal. So, and they're not requesting any deviations or any standard. They're fulfilling Mesa's current development standards. And with that, staff is recommending approval with condition. Okay. I'll be happy to answer any question if you have.
Okay, board members, any questions? Okay, if not, I'll turn a few minutes over to the applicant if you'd like to speak. And I do have a card from you, Van Graff, correct?
Yes.
If you would, your name and address.
Thank you very much, board and members of staff, for all your work on this case and attention to it. Ben Graff with a Daygraph PC, 2200 East Camelback Road, Phoenix, Arizona. I'm here representing the applicant, and you're all already very familiar with Peter Swingle, our architect, who also appears to be the architect on every other Mesa case today as well. So we appreciate your time tonight. I do have a presentation. I will give the short version, and I'm happy to go back with the long version if needed as that pops up. As we're waiting for that to come up, great, thank you so much. Let me just tell you, as a land use and zoning attorney, when somebody asks me what I do for a living, I usually start by saying I'm a consensus builder, and I really like the cases
that show and tell that story as a consensus builder between the city and the staff and the neighborhood and the developer. And it's been a great joy to work on this case and work through it. And again, while this is not a rezoning case and whether or not the use per se is appropriate for the site is not necessarily the topic, I still treat all of these cases as if they were a zoning case because they're political. We need to prove to the neighbors we're going to be a good neighbor and that it is in fact a good use. And we've done that with this case. And again, while the use was assumed to be as of right, we had a great deal of opposition toward the beginning. Our first neighborhood meeting had over 55 people in opposition. Our first design review committee meeting did not go well. There's no way to sugarcoat it. We received a lot of negative feedback on our design, our overuse of stucco, and we took about a 45-day hiatus to listen to those concerns. And either a developer will disappear after that and not listen, or they will, and I'm proud to say that we were a team that listened. This was our original site plan, which was rejected on a few notes, but a lot of it was because of pushing the buildings out closer to the east, closer to the neighborhood. A lot of our open space was hidden and contained within the inside of the site, and it just really didn't bode well for the neighborhood. These are our original elevations, and again, although they're not technically before you today, I want to tell that story. I really want you to know how we listen to the neighbors. And these were our color renderings at the time. You can see a lot of white stucco, and these were the examples that neither staff, nor the neighbors, nor DRC were very much in favor of at the time. And so, being blunt, this is what happened. I mean, we started all over again. We were happy to do so. And we took a long laundry list of, probably most importantly, what the neighbors were saying, but obviously also what staff was telling us in terms of feedback. A great deal of neighborhood input, DRC, staff comments. And again, about 45 days, we took a break to make sure we could come back to you with the right case. So this is our new site plan. We've increased landscaping. We've increased or decreased the separation between trees. We've increased the number of trees along the east side. We're starting with a larger caliper of trees, 36-inch box trees, so that maturity of the buffer to the neighbors starts from the beginning. Again, this is that old site plan with the interior open space, and this pushes that open space further toward the neighborhood. We are, as much as possible, right up against the setback to Country Club, but everywhere else we've exceeded the standards for setbacks. One of the ways we've done that is we weren't greedy on density. We could have had 102 units on this site as of right. We have 71 proposed, and that allowed us to really leave a lot of room. Our elevations are a drastic improvement, and a lot of the colors and new articulations you see, I mean, this was just flat across the top. This was a good attempt at fitting within the parameters, but it also just didn't fit within the character of the historic district from colors, materials, and there was no articulation. And again, now, especially from that bottom east and west elevation, we have a lot more of it, just a more interesting building, more beautiful building. We have better colors. We just have something that is much more akin and breaks up the height itself a bit. Again, this is a rendering. This is a long laundry list. I won't need to go through all of them. These are actually more the list of items from the neighborhood that we specifically responded to and changed in our new site plan. And we were willing to look at things as small as just moving the dumpster enclosures. There were comments about you just don't have enough for the kids and the people to do. You don't have enough open space. You don't have child play areas. We don't want children that live there to be encouraged to roam the neighborhood. We want them to be feeling at home. And so we did a lot of that. We have a better pool area to that note as well. And then one of the things that was great is there was a huge dissemination among those 55, 60 people that were very concerned that this was affordable housing from the beginning. It is not. We've stated on the record multiple times, but having those 4 neighborhood meetings, individual phone calls, individual emails to those who are concerned, letting them know that this is market rate housing, I think that alleviated a lot of the concerns. And as you heard from our last hearing, we went from about the 55 to just a couple neighbors who still remain concerned. I think they're represented here tonight, and you'll hear from them. And I won't speak for them, but again, there is still some concern just about the multifamily use in itself, but I think we've addressed the concerns. I have one example I just love to pass around. This is an example of a neighbor who was originally opposed, who has sent in, thank you so much, Wade. who has sent in a letter of support. And I really appreciate how it speaks to our team's ability and willingness to work with the neighbors, if you can take a look at that. And these are a few of the other items that we talked about as well, including another small item. We really wanted to have a good shaded area for the students who were waiting for the bus stop there as well. I won't play this for you now if you don't need it. We do have a full 3D movie rendering that made the DRC very pleased that we took in the time to do that. And I'll stop there for any comments or questions for me, and I'm happy to respond to any of the neighbors' questions or concerns as well. Thank you.
Tim, do you have a question?
Yes, well, a couple. We'll start with this one. I like to be a consensus builder too, and I want our city to improve and all of those things. I guess my first question would be, what vibe was the city putting off that resulted in that first proposal? And how do we not put off that vibe in the future? Because I realize you guys designed the whole thing and then you had to come redesign the whole thing, which I would hate to do. As an architect, I would hate to have to do that kind of thing. What do we do to better inform a developer coming in, an architect coming in, what we want to see here versus kind of what showed up the first time?
While I appreciate the question, and I'm not just saying this, I do think the process worked as it should. If you want a technical answer, because I work in a lot of different cities, maybe we could have gotten more direct feedback in the pre-app, but that wouldn't have resolved the pre-app comments or post-app comments that we got from neighborhoods, right? And I mean, a lot of the changes we made were in response to our first neighborhood meeting. So I don't think we have a lot of angst as to how the process went along. I think if we hadn't been able to come to a consensus, or if we had made these changes and not gained the support of staff, I think that would have been a concern. But as this went down, we were very pleased with how staff prepared us for each step of the way, and I think we were fine with it. And we, perhaps we as a team take obviously responsibility in terms of maybe looking a little closer at that historic district and the color palette. I think we could have done a better job to start off with that. But as it turned out, I have no complaints.
Okay.
Tim, is that good?
That's it for now. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have one card from the public. And Mr. Montague, this is your moment. I believe I got it right this time.
Thank you. My name is D. Montague. I live at 553 North Orange in Mesa. I'm about a block and a half from this project. I've lived in that neighborhood for 49 years now. Well aware of the developments and things that have taken place and that continue. The public meeting that they're referring to was probably the second one. The first meeting was held out at Red Mountain Library. And a team of us drove out there together, and there was no one there. Mr. Swingle had gotten the date wrong. He was there the day before, then the date noticed, and they were kind enough to reschedule, and we met at the fire station on Alma School, just north of Rio Salado. That night, there was a turnout, and I'll admit that I generated the turnout within the neighborhood. There were 62 people who signed in that were opposed to the project. Some of the opposition was the design. When it got to design review board, the design review board carried the conversation mostly. It wasn't the neighborhood objection. Most of the neighborhood objection is to having another large apartment building in the neighborhood and the negative impact that it has. And those objections persist today. We were told, however, that there was nothing we could do about that because the zoning allowed what was being proposed. And when I found out that we're having a meeting here, what is it that the zoning changed? Is it to combine the two parcels, as I understand possibly? Why are they here?
To approve the site plan. It's not a function of changing any zoning.
Okay, did they have to combine two parcels? Is that part of it?
Staff, can you help me with this?
I don't think we require them to combine those parcels that they have there, but that's their choice. They can combine.
Okay. Okay, have they combined for the property? That's the question I guess I have.
If they own both parcels, I
Okay.
understand there's no need.
Well, the concerns that I have are, first of all, the impact on schools. The general plan says that a lot of apartments negatively impact schools. We worked with the general plan committee to get that language in, and I'll leave with Mr. Wesley. Let me give you a couple of copies. I didn't bring one for everyone, but it shows clearly how I've just taken, out of 95 pages, I've only printed up 6 or 8, but it shows the impact on Eisenhower Elementary, Carson Junior High, and Westwood High School, who all 3 of those are way below the standard, the average for the district. And so when you add more single multifamily homes, it puts it further out of balance. Now, the school demographics will show that as you have more multifamily students, the reading and math scores go down. It's on a graph that you can just predict exactly where they'll be based on the number living in single-family home. For example, Eisenhower has 32% of its students that live in a single-family home, meaning that 67.5% live in single-family homes. The district average, however, is 56% for elementary students. To go from 56 to 32, you can see what a disparate condition that is. Carson Junior High has 45%. As students get older, the families become more stable, and you'll expect those numbers to go up. But Carson has 45% living in single-family homes, and the district average is 62% for junior high students, so still way below the average. Westwood High School, which is the district that this is in, has 49% that live in single-family homes. The average for all high school students is 68%. So again, a big disparity exists. And to add more, you can look at the chart, and if you go down the chart, something that I like to do is I look at Carson, for example, where all 9 of my children have gone to school, and Westwood, and I go back and I say, when was the last time that Carson was at the district average? You can look on the page for junior high averages that I have, and you can see when the last time was, and it was back about 1980. What happened since 1980? Lots of big apartment buildings all along Country Club, down Rio Salado, down Main Street, down University. And what's happened to the schools? They've gone tipped over. It's out of balance. What's the solution? Is to deny projects like this. They have a negative impact on the schools. If we're going to follow the general plan, where do I, as a citizen who wants to follow the general plan, come for relief? Has to be to you. Somebody has to be willing to say, maybe just because it's allowed, it's not something that we're going to do, because we are going to look at the schools, the impact on the schools. Second point, and it was brought up a lot, the impact on the Evergreen Historical District. If we're going to have historical districts and encourage them, and the homeowners go to effort to build and improve their properties, what does this do to it? It takes away the value of having that historic district. So for those reasons, I'm opposed. And if it requires a zoning approval to combine the lots, say the solution is don't approve it. If it requires a site plan approval by zoning, I do agree that they made tremendous improvement in the design and review, and I appreciate that. But it's still 71 units, and it's still going to have a negative impact on the schools and the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montague, and appreciate your opinion. Before we discuss this, I just want to remind everyone what we're really doing here is voting on the site plan. And if I might, I have a list here of some of the criteria. There are actually 10, and I'm not going to go through read it all, but let me just hit the highlights that we might consider here. This is what we're looking for. Is the project consistent with and does it conform to the adopted general plan and any sub-area or neighborhood area plans? Is the overall design of the project, including its scale, mass, site plan, exterior design, landscaping, will it enhance the appearance and features of the project and surrounding environment? Is the site plan an appropriate use for the function of the proposed project? Does the project details, colors, materials, landscaping, are they internally consistent, functional, and are they consistent with the proposed use? We heard a lot about that today. Is the project compatible with neighboring development by avoiding big differences in building scale and character? Next item, does the project contribute to the creation of a visually interesting built environment that will include a variety of building styles and designs, well articulated structures, etc. Number 7, the streetscapes, including street trees, lightings, pedestrian furniture, etc. Are they consistent with the character in the area? 8, are the street frontages attractive and interesting for pedestrians, provide for greater safety? 9, is the proposed landscaping plan suitable for the type of project and site conditions and improve the overall appearance of the community by enhancing the building and site? And then lastly, the project has been designed to be energy efficient. You know, the issue isn't here whether or not it's the appropriate use. And I understand that there are a lot of different opinions on that, but that's not what we're addressing today.
The
Any
first
comments on that? Go ahead.
The first one you read was, does it conform to the general plan? Was that the first item you read?
Yes, the project shall be, let me just read the whole paragraph. The project shall be consistent with and conform with the adopted general plan and any applicable sub-area or neighborhood plan areas, is consistent with all of the development standards of this ordinance and consistent with any specific conditions of approval placed on the zoning of the property.
So if the general plan is warning us against too many transient housing in one area, then that is within our right to say, well, this is too much. Is that how you read it? Like if that's the general plan and that's part of the criteria?
You know, that's a good question. I see the applicant would like to respond to that one. Let's let him do that.
Sure, and I won't speak from the city's perspective if staff has a comment, but I've always read that in any general plan as to what is the general plan designation for this site, and does that general plan designation call for, encourage, or allow multifamily? In this case, the actual designation from the general plan is traditional neighborhood, which does in fact encourage and allow multifamily. The secondary issue of the general plan having a policy or goal of decreasing the amount of apartments, that would speak to, in my opinion, again, rezonings. If you rezone to multifamily and you're increasing that amount of multifamily in your city, then you look to your general plan, and the general plan is advising the city of Mesa, be cautious perhaps on that question, see if it's appropriate there. That's my interpretation, and in this case, the general plan does encourage our use.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may
Yes.
add to that response just a little bit. Pretty much echo what has been said. The general plan contains a lot of different goals and objectives and policies and things we're trying to accomplish. Sometimes, if we probably look closely, we'll find some that may be, or in some situations, may be conflicting with each other. And so they are site-specific, development-specific, how we can look at it. And some things are easier to apply in given situations than others. Sort of the primary thing we are looking for is that character designation, sort of the easy one to look at. But issues such as the impacts of development on the schools and the public spaces and those types of things is an important element of the plan, and we do look for that. And I think we could even, as was pointed out by the applicant in their presentation, they could have made this more dense. They could have added more units. So I think that is a concession in some degree to this consideration of the plan by putting in less density than what could be allowed by the zoning to make sure that the area is not being more overcrowded than it could otherwise be.
Thank you, John. I would totally agree. I mean, that's a significant reduction in units. That has a big impact on the economics of the project to the developer. Yeah, so personally speaking, it sounds like you have gone, as the applicant, way out of your way to address neighborhood concerns and basically do what you're entitled to do and build an allowable use. Tim, did you?
Well, yeah, let me ask maybe a slightly larger question. We know that trends are going towards more density. That's just, as the new group of people are growing up and everything, people don't like mowing lawns anymore, which is certainly a good reason. But we also know that too many apartments in an area can have a negative effect on the schools. We're trying to balance all these different things. Maybe from your developer point of view or something like that, what might trigger a project to be a townhouse or a condo versus an apartment so that it's kind of filling both goals? Would there be something that would say, oh, you know what, maybe we should go towards this because we want density, but we also don't want the transient nature of apartments? Have you ever given any thought to what might make you choose one type versus another as far as that process?
Yeah, Chairman Clement, Member Boyle, it's an excellent question, and it's probably the first question, especially that my client looked at. And we actually had an economic study done, a market study done for this area, and that answered our question for us. The study for this specific site answered that condos were not as marketable or even closely marketable or in need as a rental product. So I feel that unfortunately the answer to that question is kind of to the whim of the market and where things stand. I will say, in terms of impact on school districts, you can control that within a rental product. So if you look at our specific project and the product, we are only out of 71 units advertising and providing 11 three-bedroom units, which are more conducive to families. And so we predict that because of our marketing more to the younger entrepreneurial couples that are coming into Mesa, trying out our city, trying out what it would be to raise a family here, we're going to only have potentially 20 to 50 actual school-age students spread among those three schools for this specific site, because that's not really our demographic market. So I will say for the specific project, it could have been designed differently to have a bigger impact on schools, but because of what our study showed and what the needs were, we're really trying to produce something for young working couples, not as much the family market.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. The other question I have is, and this goes to the zoning, a city is supposed to put the zoning in place, and this might be you, this might be staff, to say, hey, this is the kind of stuff that we want here. But when Prop 207 passed, then we kind of lost the ability to do that. All the zoning kind of got stuck in one spot. So there's a lot of this zoning, this RM zoning in this neighborhood. Again, this is my neighborhood. My own house is on RM zoning. I could turn my single-family house into a 30-unit apartment complex as well. High quality, of course, like your guys' is. But that would have a huge effect on my neighborhood. And so we run into this problem too. The zoning totally allows this, but it's because we can't change the zoning because Prop 207 doesn't let us change the zoning. So we kind of run into these problems. We know, I feel like, in the movie Jaws, the lady says, you knew there was a shark out there and you didn't do anything about it. And I feel like that same way. We know that this is having a negative effect on the schools, but we're like, well, we can't do anything about it because of the zoning, because of this, because of that, because of that. Well, that's just going to keep kind of sending things the way they are. And I think we need to, at some point, we need to figure out a way of saying, hey, well, this has got to stop. The school, Carson Junior High School has got a D. It's doing terribly. My kids should go to that school, and they don't. I send them somewhere else because that school is not going to provide what my kids need. This is a real challenge. This is a real concern to me. What do we do? It's like we're pigeonholed into one decision, and that's why all of this trend keeps happening in this way.
Okay, well, thank you.
Can I address, or John will address the 207?
Yes, Chair, I was kind of seeing if you're going to give me that opportunity. Started off as a question, ended up as maybe a statement, so I wasn't sure where we were on that. But, even before Prop 207, while cities could go in and proactively rezone properties, it's always been a difficult challenge because of property rights issues, and we could be challenged with it in court. Prop 207 made it maybe even a little bit more difficult. It's not just with rezoning, it's with any land use action we take, changing the zoning code, an applicant themselves rezoning their own property. It comes up with any of those issues. And so it is a challenge to go in and proactively look at the city and look at the amount of multi-resident zoning we have, and some of it certainly is inappropriate, done at a time when we thought the city might go one way and it's gone different. And it would be nice to go in and be able to wave our wands and change all the zoning so it better matched where we are and where we'd like to be. But it's really not very possible to do. Property owners really do need to agree to that rezoning to avoid the lawsuits and challenges that might come from that. A couple other maybe related issues in this whole mix, and I don't want to take a whole lot of time here because they're not, really direct issues for today. Mr. Sheffield brought up the list of the different schools and their attendance or the enrollment, and for several of these, like in Eisenhower, they're going down anyway, and so having new development in the area that can bring some new students can help those schools keep a student population. School boundaries can also change very easily as they look at each school over time and adjust boundaries. And so it's maybe a little hard from our zoning perspective today to look at what the developments are and know for sure how it will impact a school over time because of the way those things can change. And so we do have, again, large areas like this that were zoned years ago and have the multi-residence and maybe cause the challenge. But the use is allowed. The zoning trumps the general plan, and we have to work with that. And it's great when we have good developers like this who really look at it and take it seriously, provide good products for us. Maybe that's one of the things that we need to do at some point is come back and look at our design standards that apply to multi-residents. So the more we can set high bar for those developments, the more likely they will start off as good quality developments, demanding high rent and preserve that over time. So where we can't maybe say, no, you can't do multi-residence, but we can help ensure that's a good quality multi-residence to the best we can within a zoning environment, maybe an opportunity we have.
I just wanted to clarify something that it was said just because of people watching on TV and might get a wrong interpretation of something, that Prop 27 does not restrict you from rezoning it. You're not stuck with it. City owners are always allowed to rezone their property if they so choose to. And so, for instance, you mentioned your property and whatever is zoned, you're not stuck with it. It's not, we as a board and this council do not have our hands tied. Because of that, we are not prohibited from rezoning a property. So just because it gets signed or that's an act is not something that prevents anybody from coming out here and trying to do something different with their property. Well, whereas this case, this is not a rezoning, it's a site plan. So all those things about some of the things that apply for rezonings for consideration don't technically apply to this site. Whereas a general plan, some of the comments, general plans are policies, zoning ordinances and zoning is code, so they're looked at a little differently. Whereas a general plan are guidelines, things you try to go with, as John mentioned, a lot of times they'll conflict with each other within the code. They're just trying to get things that are in the direction of it because it's updated every 10 years, which is why you have so many broad things in there. So I just wanted to clarify that in case somebody was watching or something and started to freak out thinking that they were forever stuck in their rezoning of their property and calm them down or something, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. We feel better now.
Yeah, we're not stuck. I guess I go back to the question, though. Is adding more multifamily going to help the schools in this area? That does not seem to be the case. And therefore, if we're not trapped in it, then we need to come up with a way of not allowing the schools to be negatively affected by more multifamily in the area.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may respond to that just a little bit too. Well, maybe
Yes,
less
you
of a
may.
question either. We have some anecdotal information about multi-residence and schools, but it's not necessarily just the multi-residence itself. It's something with the quality of that. It's something with the nature of the people that are there, because I'm sure we can find areas with a lot of multi-residents that have, high performance in the schools. There are a lot of factors that go into it. So I just hate for us to characterize it too quickly as just being a multi-residence issue. I think it's a number of factors that go together that would have to be looked at.
If I just might respond on the topic of school, there's no guarantee they will go to those schools. They don't have to. There were so many options out there today. So.
Nevertheless, the schools are getting very low grades in that area. Okay. So something is affecting them.
All right. Tim, I appreciate your opinion on that. Do we have any other thoughts on this?
Just a couple of comments. Again, it has to do with schools. This morning, I did call Eisenhower, I called Carson, and I called Westwood about their attendance, and I told them what we were doing this afternoon, and they all three felt that they could accommodate any increases in school. In fact, they are anticipating that. And going back to what you had said, that just because a resident may live in this district, they may not go to that district school. I have a granddaughter that lives here in Mesa, and she went to a Gilbert school because of an open enrollment. Where it will affect the local schools or the schools in this district would be those students who want to come in that live outside the district, you know, the waiting list for that. However, if the student lives in that district, the schools will take them in. And again, from the information that I gathered today, the schools can accommodate that increased enrollment if need be. And again, as I mentioned before, and as you had alluded to, they may not go to the local schools anyway. So that's the comment I would make.
You know, and I might also add, there's something to be said about the unit mix where we don't have that many 3-bedroom units. Your 1s and
Correct.
2s, you're not going to have families there. You just won't. So, any other comments? Questions? I think I'm about ready to call for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will entertain, excuse me, and before they do that, we will call for a motion, but we get to the vote. So would somebody like to make that motion before I get started?
I'll make a motion.
Yes, Jessica.
Move to approve PZ 17036. Oh, sorry, I'm writing the wrong one. Move to approve Z17-004, District 1, 700 block of North Country Club Drive, on the east side of Country Club Drive, North of University Drive, for site plan review approval with conditions.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Steve. Any other discussion? Please vote. Okay, we have 2, 4, 6 in favor of, 1 against. Mr. Boyle, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughts and sharing your opinions. This is what these public events are all about. Okay. That's the last case on our agenda. John, is there, let's see, we do have more, but that.
Mr. Schiff?
Yes, Gordon. I believe we're going to be talking about signs. Is that correct?
Sign, everywhere a sign, yes.
Everywhere a sign.
Yeah. Yes, the 5-man electrical band lives. And that's a very obscure reference, just.
Gordon, are we down to a week now, or where are we at?
Yes, as a matter of fact, this, my scheduled date for retirement is May 25th.
Sad to hear that.
So is this your final presentation?
It depends upon what happens tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
But tonight, I'm here to talk to Gordon Sheffield. I'm the current zoning administrator for the city of Mesa. Myself and Charlotte McDermott and Angelica Guevara and a few other staff have been working on diligently trying to update the city's sign ordinance, both to modernize it and both to bring it in compliance with the recent Supreme Court decision. Tonight, I'm going to, for the most part, the purpose of my discussion here tonight is to talk to you about our outreach efforts and about some of the citizen comments, some of the things that we've heard back from various lobbying groups, from various citizen interests, just to kind of see where we're at. We're trying to kind of get that baseline understanding of how the existing code's working, things that they'd like to see change, ideas that we have to make those changes, and we float those ideas across, and then get some feedback from those folks about how we're going to do those things. I've talked to you twice in study sessions already. I talked to you a little bit about portable signs. I talked to you about permanent signs. So tonight, it's mainly about the outreach efforts, but just for the purposes of television and to get something recorded. So folks can kind of take a look at these efforts to publicize it a little bit better. We'll kind of review a little bit about some of our portable sign and our permanent sign ideas. So first of all, talk about the objectives of the sign code update. Two things. One is to modernize the sign code. The second thing is to come into compliance with the Supreme Court decision of Reed v. Town of Gilbert. This was a 2015 decision. For the most part, it says that we can't use messages as a means of regulating signs. And the other part of that is we can't show preferences for one type of message or one style of message over another. So for the most part, we have to standardize our sizes, particularly regarding to portable signs. And so we're going to update those two things in particular with regard to that Supreme Court case. Then in addition to that, we're going back and we had a long-term goal to try to modernize our sign code anyway. And so part of that, the last time we looked at our sign code was 1986. So it's been 31 years since we had a real comprehensive look at what our sign code does. We're going to try to make that user-friendly, and we're going to update for changes that have happened in the development industry since then. So this is just a quick summary of the Reed v. Town of Gilbert decision. Sign regulations cannot be based on the message, sign's content or message. So what does that mean to us? We have to eliminate message-based references and sign classifications. Mesa is not unusual in this circumstance. There are several communities that are in the same boat and are trying to make these changes. We're going to do also to try to eliminate the exceptions that are in the code. That seems to be a weakness of some of these sign ordinances, as well as manage our definitions, our prohibitions, and our applicability requirements. Okay. Let's go to the next one, if they will let me. There we go. These are the revisions that we're proposing. We can't, based on message type, we may not show preference to a type of speech. In particular, revisions are required to portable sign regulations. That's the major emphasis of the Reed decision. Our proposal is to use sign form as the foundation for some of the standards that we're proposing, some of the regulatory requirements. We're not going to limit messages, so none of the regulations will have any kind of reference to message or message-based types of content. In addition to that, we're going to standardize our sign areas, and then we're going to do that based on the forms and the context. So this is our focus. We're going to focus on the measurable aspects of the sign, the things that a person can clearly see without necessarily looking at the message. We're going to do that using form-based code type concepts and principles. We do that by classifying the sign form, and we do that based on the materials, the structure, and the method it anchors to the ground. Then we take a look at the location and the context. Both that comes from the zoning district and the parcel size, and the length of the street front and the number of street fronts. Then we'll set standards based on that. And so we'll take a look at the number and the height and the area of the sign. We'll also take a look at some sight distance triangles because we're concerned about safety in these types of things to make sure signs aren't blocking visibility when we're exiting driveways or around intersections. We'll also take a look at setbacks from the street as well as spacing between the signs so that we avoid clutter. What we're proposing these are the allowed sign types. The code already authorizes these in the present zoning ordinance. So all we're really doing is taking it from a message-based foundation more to a form-based foundation. So we're taking a look at attached rigids and detached rigids. This is just another way to say basically a piece of plywood that's placed on a building or a piece of plywood that's placed on two posts. We'll take a look at yard signs, detached banners, wall banners, A-frames, and T-frames. This would be a common type of table that you would see in the code. This basically has to do with single residence districts, where you would typically have, again, the philosophy is in the single residence districts, on smaller lots, you would have smaller signs and smaller sign authorizations. As the lots get larger or you get more street frontages, then you get larger signs and more signs. So that's the proposal. Similar type of thing, you start off with, in commercial districts, you start off with a standard or an authorization that has a larger standard to it. And those basically grow again in terms of number and sizes as the size of the property grows. That's the logic behind this. But when you compare residential to commercial, then the authorization in residential districts are smaller than they are in commercial districts. In terms of fabric signs, we're proposing a 30-day allowance without a special event license and then with a special event license. They would also be authorized, but only during the special event itself. The effects of these changes, what we anticipate is there's probably going to be an increase in the number of portable signs used. And a lot of this is because we're not controlling the messages anymore, because we're not classifying it by the message. By giving the authorization to have the sign in the first place, people can use these signs for any message they want. So what used to be real estate signs or contractor signs or development signs can now be used to sell bubble gum. They can be used to sell comic books. They can be used to advertise that somebody just likes things. But there's no limitations on any of those, whereas under the previous code, if we had a real estate sign, then in theory the sign was supposed to be used to sell real estate. If we had a contractor sign, then that authorization was for a contractor sign. It wasn't used to sell bubble gum. We don't control that anymore. So we anticipate that these types of portable signs, in order to be able to keep those authorizations that we have for real estate signs or contractor signs or development signs, will now be used for most any purpose. In addition to that, our maximums are going to change. In our efforts to make these signs standardized, some signs were a little bit bigger and some signs were a little bit smaller. You're going to see standardization across the board on all of these types of things. So signs that used to be authorized up to 48 square feet are now going to be limited to 32 square feet, but signs that at one time were limited at 16 square feet will be able to go up to 32 square feet. 32 square feet, or whatever we're proposing, is our maximum. Any questions about portable signs, Mike? Because I'll move on to permanent. With permanent signs, the big focus here again is modernizing the code. Again, 1986 was the last time we objectively looked at this on a very comprehensive type of overall sign code type of review. That was 31 years ago, and there's been a lot of changes happening to the development industry since then. So we're going to take a look at our permanent sign allowances, particularly our downtown and our urban districts. We're getting a lot of interest in Mesa's downtown, and so we need to take a look at what's an urban type of sign code. In addition to that, some of our commercial district maximums need to be revised, primarily because the scale of buildings has changed. We'll take a look at what we're calling an administrative or a standard sign plan option. We're getting a lot of good feedback about that option from the sign industry, as well as design standards for sign structures and then updating the formatting and the organization. So the first thing in terms of permanent signs, we'll take a look at the sign allowances for multiple tenant buildings, particularly in office districts. We'll take a look at some of the authorizations for single tenant buildings, pad sites that are in commercial properties, because they're some unique conditions because they're four-sided architecture and they're visible on four sides. The sign code doesn't really address that circumstance right now. For the most part, the remainder of the sign ordinance for permanent signs is going to be roughly the same in terms, what we're proposing anyway. In terms of the sizes of the signs, the authorizations for the signs, we find for the most part that those work, with the exception of some of the maximums. And then we're making incremental changes so that we recognize the scale. We'll incrementally bump up the size of the maximums so that they reflect something in scale with the proportion of the building itself. This administrative sign plan option, what we're proposing basically, instead of having basically a kind of a uniform set of signs that somebody can basically pick and choose from, the idea behind an administrative sign plan is on the detached sign, someone comes through and plans how they utilize those signs to begin with. But they allow basically a primary center ID sign, one central sign itself, and then basically all other signs are limited to relatively short signs that are 8 feet high. We've seen examples of this that's being used in other communities. We're kind of reflecting that in this. We're getting good feedback from it. But we always have the comprehensive sign plan. We've had that in place since the late 1970s. It's utilized extensively throughout the city, but we'll have that kind of as a backup, and we anticipate that that'll still be used by the development industry. These are the folks that we've talked to in terms of our public input and our staff recommendations. We've talked to the Real Estate Association, both commercial and the residential folks. We've talked with the International Sign Association and their local chapter. We've talked with Valley's partnerships as well as different lobbying organizations that represent different marketing interests, including the retailers and the food marketers. We've talked with the Central Arizona Home Builders as well as the Multi-Housing Association and the Retailers Association. We've held meetings both on the east side and the west side of town. We've made contact with the Chamber of Commerce. We haven't had a whole lot of conversations yet with the downtown folks, but we anticipate doing that. In addition to that, we've reached out to the International Council of Shopping Centers and asked for contacts for those folks. We haven't been successful in actually making a local contact with that. We've been talking with their New York folks, and they're trying to get us someone to chat with. So this is what we've heard, and this is basically the the reason I'm talking to you tonight is where these comments are coming from. From the neighborhoods, you could kind of predict this a little bit. They want fewer signs and smaller signs. They don't want big signs, they don't want bright signs, they don't want a lot of signs, they want fewer and smaller. They still have a concern that some portable signs are up for long periods of time. They have a particular concern about the Phoenix Marathon sign. And they can anticipate some changes to that. There's a continued allowance of fabric signs. And they have a concern about lax enforcement, and that's not necessarily a subject of the sign code update, but it's a concern that we're going to present to council. In terms of the real estate agents and the apartment owners, they like fabric signs, especially in the multiple residence districts. They'd like to utilize them there. They'd like us to allow wall banners and feather banners. Portals, they'd like us to be authorize portable signs greater than 3 feet high within 15 feet of the pavement. What we've done is we've gone to our transportation folks. We had initially proposed that there would be a cap of 3 foot when they were that close to it. What we've come up with is basically if it's adjacent to a road that's 2 lanes or less, then they can put it right up to the property line. If it's 3 lanes or wider, then we'll maintain that 15-foot setback from the edge of pavement or from the face of curb. As it turns out, most property lines, when they're adjacent to multi-lane roads like that, the 3 or the 4, the 5 or 6 lane roads, you need to be 15 feet back anyway, because otherwise you're in the right of way. And so by that 15-foot distance just happens to coincide usually with the distance from the face of curb to where the property line's at. So it's a useful measure to start with. They'd also like us to increase the number of days being proposed for the use of fabric signs. We're proposing 30. They'd like to bump it up to maybe 45 or 48, something like that. We're proposing 30, and we're going to ask council for direction on that. From the home builders, they'd like to use the fabric signs at their model home complexes. Again, both the wall banners and the detached feather banners. They like larger rigid signs at the home complexes, currently proposing 32. They've shown us where in some communities they authorize up to 96 square feet for some of these types of things. We're, again, because of the concern with READ over standardizing sizes, we don't want to show preference of one type of sign message over another. So we're, again, standardizing that at the 32 square foot. They'd also like us to authorize weekend directional signs in some manner. What we've proposed is that where they would normally put these weekend directional signs, these are the little, some people call them bandit signs. They're basically the little yard signs. They're cardstock that's on a wire frame that they put on the side of the road. They kind of direct people out to where these new subdivisions are. What we're proposing is that they get the permission of the property owner, and that becomes part of that property owner's allowance, that property owner will be authorized 4 or 6 or however they're allowed, and that the number of these directional signs would just be part of that number that's already authorized by that property owner. So there's no special allowance that's given to it. The property owner is just given permission that his allowance could be used for this purpose. We've talked to the sign companies and then some of the commercial center owners, not a lot, but some of them. They'd like larger by right individual maximum sign areas. We're proposing 160. We're proposing not to change that. We've generally found that that's still visible. We always have the option of going to a comp sign plan and taking a look at the individual sites. But as a standard by right, we're still proposing 160. They'd like us to use the same ratio. Right now, it's the 2 square foot per 1 foot for the linear front. We're proposing, as part of the scaling idea, is that buildings that are over 200 feet wide would then use a different ratio, which is 0.8, or it basically 0.8 instead of the other two. And what we found is that's usually in line with what the Board of Adjustment has proposed and authorized through the comprehensive sign plan process. And so we're trying to remain consistent with that. Again, this is the standard in the by right or the administrative sign plan options that are done through staff. If they want to propose something different, they always have the option for the comp sign plan. Again, they've told us they like the standard sign plan option. They'd like us to look at the idea of sign height or sign areas based on speed limits. The issue with that is that speed limits vary on occasion. Just recently, for example, University Drive went up from 35 miles per hour to 40 miles an hour because of a study that the traffic folks did that said it wasn't necessary to keep it at 35. Doing that creates uncertainty, and it creates non-conforming conditions that are difficult to deal with. Our proposal is to do something that's based on something that's a little bit more settled and a little bit more firm, which generally the width of the property that's involved in, or the width of the project that's involved. Those are usually set standards, and those usually don't vary too much at all. So that's what our idea is for that. They need additional details by portable sign allowances. When we get the public review draft available in June, we'll make that available to them, and they'd like us to consider, again, an increase in the number of days of fabric sign allowances. Again, we'll talk to council about that probably tomorrow. Again, these are just a kind of real quick summary for our staff recommendations of some of the changes. Again, increasing the maximal individual sign area allotment, we're proposing to maintain at 160. They also talked to us about shortening the transition rates on electronic message panels. We agree with that. We pretty much set it at 15 seconds for a long, it's been that way for a long time. The Federal Department of Transportation and ADOT have recommended 8 seconds. We'll agree to go to 8 seconds. To increase the maximum height and area of detached signs, again, our staff proposal is that on a standard basis, we maintain the 12-foot and 80 square foot. That seems to have worked in most circumstances. But with the standard sign plan option, they would be authorized have a single sign, a single tenant ID sign at 14 feet and 120 square feet high. 14 feet high and 120 square feet. That should give them a little bit more room to provide tenant IDs there, and then we don't feel it'll necessarily be a knock against sign clutter or other types of things because we're lowering the other signs that are related to pad sites. Fabric signs, again, we've got this bit of a conflict. The neighborhood doesn't like them. The industry loves them. We're kind of trying to bridge a compromise there with our 30-day proposal. Again, that's 30 days per year, and then the applicant would have the choice of how they use those 30 days. We'd also authorize them with special events. Detached rigid signs, again, the home building industry would like to use larger signs. We're more concerned about complying with READ and trying to standardize that at the 32. And that's it for the permanent signs. Next topic is the schedule. We anticipate releasing a public review draft, the actual draft ordinance itself. That would happen next month. And we would basically begin receiving comments on that. We talked to you folks again in June and July. That won't be me. It'll probably be Angelica Guevara, but you'll still be talking about this for a while. So this is the last time you hear the topic. It's just the last time you see me.
You can always come and be public. And
That's true. That's true. I could. I might have a vested interest.
That time. What's that?
I have a vested interest. I'm a Mesa resident, so why not? July and August, we anticipate having a hearing with you folks for consideration. Potential council introduction of the update to the sign code in September with action possibly a little bit later, October or November. So any questions? Yes.
You have the abbreviation for Sevar incorrect, so just thought I'd make that note.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yes, SEVAR, and it should be SEVRAR, just to let you know.
I apologize, thank you. I'll get it right. I'll be sure to get to that. I'll make sure Angelica gets it right.
I have a question. I think you talked a little bit about how enforceable these are. Is that a complete other jurisdiction? Is that not part of this plan? Is that something that another group takes care of enforcing?
Yeah, enforcement's done through code enforcement. It's still part of the same department that the planning department is organized under. The planning division is organized as part of development services. But it's done by a group called Code Enforcement, and so there's a dedicated group of inspectors that go out and do that.
Okay. I guess my big concern is doing a huge update and writing all these things and then not being able to enforce them, kind of like we currently can't now, right? So why are we doing all this work if we can't really enforce it anyway? I guess that's kind of my larger concern.
Part of the reason for writing the code is to write the code in a way that it can be enforced. Part of the issue with that, though, is that the sign code is not the highest priority in terms of enforcement. The people we have who do the inspections spend most of their time generally on life safety issues and questions that are related to that, and then the sign code generally becomes like an N or an O type of priority if you look at it that way.
Any other questions?
Thank you. It's been good to work with you folks. Thank you.
We'll miss you, Gordon.
Thank you.
Happy retirement.
Thanks. We'll see how that goes.
I would like to make a motion to continue Gordon's stay with the city.
I'll second that.
Better check with council on this one.
Yeah.
I'd check with my wife.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, do we have any other business, John? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being around and for the discussions we've had today. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this. Thank you, Jennifer. Steve, was that a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Vote, however you want to do it. I think we're done. We'll see you next month. Thank you.